Well, welcome to FourSight U. This is a session on how foresight and AI might help us all think better together. Um, I am particularly excited to be in this conversation and to be part of this conversation today, because we are really needing to learn how to use this tool and really needing to know what to do with it and how to do it. So for myself, let's just go through quickly the agenda that we have in mind. A quick welcome, my own quest, and Gerard's story that kind of kicked off some new thinking about AI and what it could be and how we could interact with it. Questions for you about how you're using AI, uh, an activity where we're going to try to come up with some better prompts for how to use AI to support good foresight thinking, and then talk about sort of how AI is really starting to show up as a non-human teammate and where it seems to function well and where it seems to not function well. Um, and have a conversation about that and share and close. So that's the whole agenda. Um, and let's begin. So it was in May 2025 that I attended the ATD conference where it's the Association of Talent Development Conference in DC, and there were 9,000 people, all from learning and development or HR or organizational development departments, and there were hundreds of sessions and speeches, and fully half of them had something to do with AI. So I attended a lot of those sessions, but this May, I'm going back to the ATD conference to deliver a session that's about building teams that outperform AI. And that has required me to really start doing my homework. Um, so I started having regular talks with our FourSight founder, Gerard Puccio, about AI. And for those of you who don't know, Gerard is the chair of the State University of New York's Department of Creativity and Change Leadership. And he thinks a lot and studies how people think and how they can think better and how they can think better together. And as the co-founder of FourSight, he has helped us with our mission of helping people think better together. But he shared with me last year a story of an unpublished research study from Bayes Business School in London. And I want to start by sharing that story with you. The study, as he remembered it, pitted toy designers against AI to see who could come up with the best new toy design. And they put the designs in front of a panel of expert judges, and AI won. Those results were disturbing because AI had beat expert toy designers at their own game. Not only that, but AI was apparently more creative than the toy designers. So they ran the study again in a different way. And this time, they trained the designers in the explicit use of creative problem solving. And this time, the humans won. So I'm waiting for the published version of that story, as is Gerard. And it may be apocryphal, but the story points out some really important things. That AI, even in its current form, which is the beginning of what will become a much more sophisticated form, I'm sure, even in this form, AI can beat humans, even human experts. That AI has encroached on human creativity. You know, these were design experts, and AI came up with a better new toy design. And third is that humans trained in thinking tools and process can outperform AI. Of course, I love that story because it's sort of like a John Henry story. Remember John Henry, the guy who competed against this new steam shovel, saying humans could pickaxe their way through a mountain faster than the machine? And John Henry won, but he promptly died, and the machine is still here. So of course, I'm rooting for the humans in this story, and in this AI story. But, in 2026, sorry, John Henry, but no one is earning a living hauling a pickaxe. And I suspect that in a few years, no one is going to be working on a computer without the help of AI. AI is coming fast. It's coming faster than any other technology or transformational technology we've ever seen. We can resist it, we can embrace it, but actually, our goal today, I'm actually hoping that this community can choose a different response. I'm hoping that this community, which is trained in creative process and trained in collaborative problem solving, can use AI to forward our ongoing mission to help people think better together and with AI. So that's the goal of this conversation, to begin to combine what we know and have experienced about foresight, how to think and how we think, and to teach ourselves and to teach others to use AI to help humans think better together and ultimately to thrive. So in chat, I would love for you all to just give me and Russ, who's also facilitating this session, a sense of your familiarity with AI on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is I don't really know anything about it, to 10, which is I'm very comfortable with it, very familiar with it. Where are you on that scale? We're seeing a range 3.5, 7, 7, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so great. That's sort of what seems to be going on all over town. Like there's a huge range of people's experience, what they know, how much they know, how comfortable they feel. Um, and then your next task in chat is I would love for you to put in chat your most surprising or successful use of AI. Like, what did you use it to do that really did well that you were surprised by? And while you're doing that, I'll tell you a story of my success case, which happened in January. Was flying over to deliver a keynote in Germany, and we decided to fly um, into Brussels first and see some friends from graduate school, including Ingrid de Klerk. And so we went to Brussels, but we had 2 days, like a day and a half that was unspoken for, like what we're going to do on from Monday afternoon to Wednesday morning. And I thought, I don't have time to go to a travel agent or just find a travel guide. So I typed it into ChatGPT. I was like, where would you go if you were a couple that like to walk and do historical things and be in a small town? And we're going from this town to this town. And we need to eat gluten free. So AI spits out in 10 seconds, go to Strasbourg. Here's a 1 day itinerary. Here are the hotels you might choose from. And here are the 12 gluten-free restaurants that we'd recommend. I'm like, that's exactly what we did. And it was just great. It was such a surprise. Like that was surprising. So, um, Russ, if you looked into chat, do we see some fun uses of AI? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Thanks. So I'll start from bottom to top. Wrote a proposal to allow estate sales, developing better assessments, research, feedback, bouncing thoughts on personal challenge, another research and itineraries for travel, editing feedback. And mine was, I thought it was great, tweaking a Board of Ed speech from 3 minutes to 1 minute. So I needed to cut it to meet a time frame.
Super cool. So AI does a huge range of things and some of it incredibly well. Um, and so I would ask, and I've got you on full screen so I can see everybody. Like at this point, if you don't want to turn your camera on, I totally get it. But if you would turn your camera on, like, how would you rate AI? And a thumbs up if you've had at least one really great experience using AI. Like, I definitely I'm so happy I went to Strasbourg as well as some other stuff. Okay, perfect. I love the virtual thumbs up. That's great. Okay, now, in all honesty, like thumbs, I meant to write down, I wrote up, but thumbs down if you'd had at least one disappointing use of AI where it kind of really did not do the thing. Yeah, okay. And jazz hands if you've had both of those experiences. Yeah. I think I think that's pretty common to have really disparate experiences um, using AI. So I I have done, as I say, a lot of reading, a lot of researching, a lot of talking to people, and a lot of learning myself to understand how does AI think? Like, why are we all experiencing that real disparity where sometimes it's really great and sometimes it's really just trash? Um, and so I thought, okay, I can explain this, but I thought I'd let AI explain it itself. So I asked AI to explain, um, like what is it? These new AI models that we're using, like ChatGPT, they're not calculators, so that they're not accurate, they're not reliable. They're actually large language models or LLMs. And this is what AI explained about what is an LLM. A large language model, or LLM, is a type of AI that has read a massive amount of text and learned patterns in language. So it can understand questions and generate human-like responses. It doesn't think like a person. It predicts the most likely next word based on everything it has learned. And it does that so well that it feels like a conversation. This is still AI talking. Imagine giving a computer access to millions of books, articles, websites, and conversations, and instead of memorizing them, it studies patterns, how sentences are structured, how ideas connect, how tone changes depending on context. And from those patterns, it learns to answer questions, summarize information, generate ideas, rewrite content, and brainstorm creatively. An LLM, according to AI, is basically a pattern recognition engine for language. If you've ever used an autocomplete in email or text messaging, you've seen a tiny version of this. An LLM is like an autocomplete on steroids. Instead of predicting the next word of a sentence, it can predict the next paragraph, the next idea or strategy. So, back to my words, um, this is this interacting with an LLM, which is predicting the next word, is really confusing. In our January newsletter, I wrote, AI can do a lot of things, but it can't think. AI gives users the distinct impression that it thinks and feels, but AI is a large language model that is simply mimicking and predicting word combinations. Thinking is different. As we know from FourSight, thinking asks critical questions to clarify. Thinking makes unexpected connections to ideate. And thinking makes us use keen judgment to develop solutions and learn by doing to implement. Um, so in that newsletter, I'm very proud that we are putting out something, and more people read that newsletter than have read a lot of newsletters of late, and more people wrote about it, including Susan Robertson, who is a Harvard instructor and a FourSight certified facilitator who uses AI a lot. And she said, okay, I agree, AI doesn't think, but it can help our thinking. And I loved what she actually wrote. She said, human still has to drive, but if you drive carefully, AI can be a good co-pilot. So what I'd like to do now is think through how we can all prompt AI to help us individually think better, and in groups also. Like, how can we use AI to help us compensate for our thinking preferences, both high and low? How can we use it to avoid amplifying our thinking preference and to do more thinking in areas of low preference? So, Russ, will you do me a favor and create breakout rooms? And the idea is to talk about how to use AI to enhance our thinking and what might be all the prompts to get AI to help us. So, Russ, how are you going to set up these rooms just so people know what they're getting into?
Sure. We've got 4 rooms, and your room is named Clarify, Ideate, Develop, or Implement. You may have one partner, you may have two. And just we're going to ask you, you know, if you're in the Clarify room, what might be all the prompts to get AI to help us clarify, etc. And just see what happens. Um, we'll give you about 5 to 7 minutes. I'll check in. And then Sarah had asked if someone could scribe however you do. And when we come back, we'll ask someone to share and just drop it in the chat. Sound good? Groups are totally random.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
Neat. Well, I would love to
Hmm.
hear what folks said. We ended up being in the Clarify room because the room bounced around. So Russ and I got the inside scoop on clarifying. Um, but would somebody like to start with ideating? Actually, in our group, did anybody scribe? I was trying to scribe, but did anybody scribe?
I took a few notes. I think
Oh,
some of
you're the best.
the
That's perfect.
main I think some of the really intriguing things was, and this would be true across all of the stages, would be to be aware if you're in divergent or convergent mode and prompt accordingly so that you are asking for either more information. The other thing Helene suggested was always in clarifying asking for sources so you understand where it's coming from and you know whether it's
Mhm.
useful or it's just predicting nonsense. And creating prompts, like thinking through that, having creating prompts within AI to prompt itself so that you kind of structure it and the instructions that you give it, I think up front, that it knows what the goal is of the work that you're trying to do, that you're in that clarify stage.
I will add that, Susanna, you came up with a really interesting thought as well. In the interest of clarifying to solve the right problem, asking what are other articulations of this same challenge? Like, what are other ways that we could think of the challenge? And you
Mm.
can prompt it to start with how to or how might. Um, but that doesn't seem to be the default of AI. It doesn't seem to want to ask questions or open things. It tends to want to close things. So that's you know, as somebody in our group said, you can prompt it to diverge and converge, but if you don't know, you don't know. It's not going to do that. So
How does it converge? Does anyone know like what because
oh,
convergence for me has always felt like a very underdeveloped topic anyway, but I wonder if people have experience with that because I haven't used it that way.
Or you can ask him to say, okay, what do you think is the best solution of all the things you suggested, or and why? Or you can give a criteria and say, based on this, what's the one that is going to be more easy to implement, or whatever, and why? So you can do what you would do normally as human, or you can do a mix, but you can ask those questions. But you have to know. That's why I think that we still have to understand the principle of foresight and creative problem solving so we can use the same thing with AI, whether it's your solo partner or you have humans and you play with it, because otherwise you are going to not know what you don't know. And you just assume that you just give the question. I mean, you can give a question and get the perfect answer. I mean, I played with it. You can get in 5 minutes, you can get from I want to create a new product in this area to get a drawing of a concept. But the value of it, if you don't understand how you do it, is probably very limited. And by the way, your competition can do the same thing in the next 5 minutes. So
Yeah.
what's your edge?
Mark, we've used it when we're doing synthesis to ask it to create themes or kind of clusters, groupings. So that's
Mm.
not telling you, it's not asking you for the answer of the best. So that'd be another way to do it, but giving it some criteria and asking it to say, what are the patterns that between these ideas or something like that,
Okay.
topics.
yeah, I would love to hear from the group that talked about ideate.
That was me and Nathan. We talked about ideate. I kind of took notes. Yeah, Nathan, jump in. let's see. One thing was just really basic, like to write up what you learned in the clarify stage, like pop it in there, and then ask AI, how might we blah 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 or whatever, and just literally ask it to ideate for you. Um, I have found it's not the best ideator personally, but it also could be user error. But someone explained to me that, AI is only based on what's already happened, and it doesn't quite have imagination like we do. Um, so then we talked about asking AI to facilitate the CPS process for you and say, okay, we've finished the clarify stage. This is our question. Can you guide us through ideate and lead us through different, ideation techniques to use? And then humans are doing that ideating, and maybe you even like plop some of the ideas in and say, use these ideas to push us further. Um, we also asked, oh, and one thing Nathan pointed out is that like whatever you put in there as the prompt, that at the end, invite AI to ask any clarifying questions first. And that's probably just like a really good general guideline. We also talked about having it curate hypothetical scenarios. Yeah, Nathan, jump in. What else? Anything else you want to add?
One other application that, in addition to sort of all the excellent ones that Amy mentioned, we've been using it quite a bit at work here to generate personas for us. They can generate just really deep, interesting users that are all synthetic. But then you can ask it to ideate against those specific synthetic users, and it just provides sort of this extra layer of ideation on top of everything you've done already. So that's a pretty convenient way to do something that used to be pretty labor intensive in that kind of design thinking space in terms of generating archetypes and personas, et cetera. Not suggesting that you just outsource all of it to AI, but it can give you probably 80% of it in a couple milliseconds, and then you can put your human energy against really tweaking the other 20.
That's cool.
That is
Has anyone ever tried like asking it to think out of the box?
I think I've said, well, I've used it a couple times trying to generate ideas for for naming a product. I really hate naming things. I'm very bad at it. And I found it was really good at naming workshops or keynotes, but not very good at naming products where I wanted something maybe a little more clever or unique. And I asked it, I don't think I said the words think outside the box, but I asked it, to get creative but the ideas were like, okay.
Hmm.
Again, it could also have been user error on my part. Um,
I love what Elaine said in our session that when well you tell when you were doing the IDEO course what happened with the results that came back.
Yeah, it was interesting because if you use the same LLM and different group end up getting, you get the same answers. You tend to get the same answers. So it's also how do you get different answers? Maybe not the LLM are thinking the same, so use more than one. Um, and then, yeah, probing, I think probing is like, I think it's critical in general because if we don't ask the right question, we're not necessarily going to get the right answer, whether it's through AI or not.
Mhm. Yeah. Should we move to develop?
Yeah, that was Jiska and I, and we came up with a number of potential prompts. For example, can you explain one of the proposed solutions in more detail, or can you summarize according to a particular criterion, X, let's say, or can you elaborate points Y and Z? Can you analyze and identify gaps in our thinking or missing steps in our thinking? We thought it can help draft chronological steps on how to go about implementing. Can you look at our thought process, of course, which would have been described then, but from a different perspective? Can you look at it from the perspective of a clarifier? Can you look at it a perspective from an ideator or from an implementer as well? So you get various viewpoints. And then that's something that I often use as well is basically giving AI a persona, like you are for example, I don't know, a developer specialized in blah, 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 how would you look at this, or what is your viewpoint from what we uh, are developing right now?
Super helpful. Yeah, Helene.
Yeah, I would add all the prototyping, which is also part of that class I took. It was at IDEAL has a class on AI in design thinking, and so how you can use it to do prototypes. It could be flowcharts, it could be drawings, it could be something. So you can really use it. I mean, it can be slow, and if you don't pay, I think it's limited, but you can get visuals. I think that is really powerful. That's really part of development.
Yeah, that's great. Super useful. What about the group that spoke about implement?
Marilyn, you're
Uh,
on. Yeah.
we were kind of all over the place.
We're
Okay.
both ideators, so you put us in
Yeah,
like the worst possible group, and we were all over the place, and we didn't
Torture,
yeah,
really
sorry.
take notes, and
yeah. What was interesting to me, so because I'm taking a course, a mentorship on coaching and AI, and yesterday in the course, which made me flip to thinking about today as you started here, Sarah and Russ, asking a question about how my preference bumps up against some other's preference and what I might do and say that would totally derail the team. So in that kind of development thing, and asking AI to be uncomfortably specific and to not flatter me because it will do that. So really having that ability to play in that space with it, particularly if you've trained it. I've been using one for a while, so typically I say, Claude, don't flatter me.
so I think what Marilyn is also pointing out there is that when we're thinking about it, AI right now, although there's more and more tools available, isn't in and of itself agentic. You need to throw in some tools to which are becoming easier to use. So it's not really an implementer, like it doesn't. So I think Marilyn was quite rightly bringing up more of how can it help work with implementers or simulate emulators or whatever, because unlike the rest of the categories, it can't really do the work of an implementer.
Right.
And you can create an action plan. You can create scenarios.
Yeah,
It can create how would you happen to the competition, or how is it changing? I mean, you can create a
right.
lot of things on implementation though.
Yeah. It can figure out who are resistors or resistors, and you can ask it to be one of those and simulate what it would like be to take them your plans or to do work breakdown structure or whatever, agile stuff that you wanted. So it could do all of those kind of things for sure.
Super interesting. Well, let's keep going in um and sort of see where we end up here. Um I love I love that conversation. I could do that conversation for a long time. Um, but one of the things I wanted to share too was that at this ATD conference last May, stumbled into a room where a Harvard professor was talking about how to think about AI, what the right mental model was. And she said, we think of it as a tool, like, hey, just have AI do this. Or she said it's really not a tool. It's more like a team member. It's more like a co-thinker, a co-intelligence. And like any team member, it needs roles assigned to it and expectations assigned to it. So people know in the team how it's going to work, what's the appropriate way to work with it, and what is inappropriate. Um, because AI clearly has real strengths and real blind spots, like any team member. And as I was thinking about like what's the right mental model to understand the right strengths and blind spots of AI, it suddenly struck me that our son Cole really helpful, gave me a really helpful insight into AI. When he was in first grade, it was clear he was struggling to read and write. And by the end of first grade, no luck. By the end of second grade, still no reading and writing. So we went to a learning specialist and had him go through a whole battery of tests. This is a really bright kid. Like he loved space, he knew everything about outer space and spacemen and the planets, etc., but like couldn't read and write. So when we did the testing, we found something super interesting. The tester said, look, with most people with sort of average, your average candidate, if they have a certain IQ, all of their other tests will kind of cluster around that. There'll be a bit of a bell curve where if you show up this way as your intelligence, everything else kind of falls there too. With kids with learning disabilities, those results can be wildly disparate. You can have really high intelligence or really high performance in some things and sort of surprisingly low performance in others. And I thought, wow, that's sort of like AI. So I called Cole and said, can I tell this story? And he was like, absolutely. So it is, for me, it's been really helpful to start focusing not on like, why is it screwing up, but like, what is this LLM doing that's causing it to behave this way or that way? And what we know is that, the strengths, incredibly powerful. Some of the things AI can do now, detect cancer in scans, forecast weather, correct quantum computing, like translate in real time, drive cars, like incredible stuff. But what it doesn't do well, it will hallucinate less now than it used to, but still it'll hallucinate because it aims to please. It will tend to amplify your thinking rather than challenging it. It can be very poor at math, like it can't spell well in an image that it creates. It has trouble switching contexts. If you show it a picture of Kim Kardashian, it says it's Kim Kardashian, but if you slip it upside down, it thinks it's a cat. So it also has no judgment, no ability. This is not what AI does. It predicts the next language. It doesn't say if that's right or that's wrong or that's positive or that's negative. And what they're finding, an HBR article this month suggests that because it's indefatigable, it's absolutely tireless, it can overload people with content, with things to execute, with things to implement. And instead of providing productivity, it seems to intensify work. I love your comment in Slack, Russ. So how can we think of this sort of structurally? What's a structural way to think about this? And I was reading a book called Co-Intelligence, which I highly recommend. You may have already read it, by a Wharton professor. I'm telling you, it's a great book. Ethan Mollick, who talks about AI in sort of a framework and basically saying that precision, like if what you need is the right answer based on math, that could be good for a big data AI, but for an LLM, that's not the kind of problem it solves well. When you need high precision and judgment, probably not the place for AI, as evidenced by Zillow in 2021 decided they were going to go all in on AI, and they created an AI that would autonomously buy houses so that it could jump faster, it could close the deal faster, and Zillow ended up losing about $500 million on that enterprise because there was no human interest. They just let the AI do the buying and the market shifted and some houses weren't quite right. Your 80% rule, Nathan, 80% is not good enough when you're buying a lot of houses. Like it was a complete fiasco. So, that probably ended up somewhere in this area. Whereas what AI is good at is coming up with solutions where there are multiple possible solutions, copy editing or changing the way you're wording something, or Amy, your naming of a speech. If there are lots of ways to do that, and AI will generally come up with some decent ones. So this proximate thing, it's much better at. And it also, as we've discussed today, is much better at generation, just creating answers, content, questions, whatever you're asking it to create. not so good at judgment. And when we interact with AI with that understanding, we tend to get more successes and avoid more failures because we know in areas in these quadrants, we really need a lot more oversight. It needs a lot more human interaction. So I'm curious if we think about in that scenario, like how do we help groups think better together and how do we combine the best of foresight and AI to facilitate better thinking in groups? I'd be, I don't know if we want to do that in breakout groups or we want to do that sort of as a collection. Russ, what do you think?
I think collection given your time.
All right. All right. So I'm really interested in sort of what people have
I think
are
um
doing here.
my
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Holly.
Go.
yeah, my initial thought, and so I'm just for context, I'm coaching a class for product manager. They you have 6 weeks homework. Now the 6 week homework is 30 prompt, and there's this guy that's working on this prompt, and every time he uses a different thing, and those prompts are really in depth. And I'm thinking if we could create prompt that would really be useful to really do a great work using Foresight and Teams. So they have the best prompt and then they, and we could create that. I think that could be something. I mean, I don't know how you get the financial model or anything, but so there's like 35 prompts and I did half of them and it gets a lot of great information. It's also really overwhelming, but how we can
Yeah.
create the prompt. So as facilitator of this, we can say, yeah, you can do your stuff by AI by yourself, but once you have to have the good prompt too, you have to know what to do with the result of the prompt and have kind of how do you facilitate in the time of AI? A little bit like IDOU was doing with design thinking and AI and how you do that as a combination.
So I'm curious, does IDEO suggest that you should just let AI do the thinking, or are you supposed to do some pre-thinking first and then use the prompts? Like, how do they interact with that?
The way the class was built, it was an online class, and they explained the different principle of design thinking, and then we had an exercise, and we used the prompt to go through the steps of design thinking, and then but we were doing as a group, and so you can see even like we were discussing a lot about what the prompt should be, and then what happened, and then what happened next when you get that result, and all of that, and that was really the human part with AI.
Mhm.
So that's how they have the class. And I think something like that for Foresight and AI could be very useful to people
Yeah,
that use Foresight.
yeah, super useful.
I don't have an answer to that, but I do have an offer and that is that I've got a group of students that I'm giving foresight to in about a month and a half, and I'm going to give them a creativity activity, which I pretty much always do, and we could try something on them if someone
I'm
has an idea.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
super curious. One of the ideas that immediately comes to mind is that the challenge navigator, our sort of page per stage process. It's like bowling with the bumpers on. You really can't miss. You're like, do your goal, do your data, do your challenge, do your ideas, develop your, it would be great if, do a point. What's your action plan? We actually are building that now with AI prompts in each of those steps so that you could do your data and then you could get 5 additional data points, or you could use your own AI and a prompt. But I'd be super curious. I don't know how to use that. But just yesterday, I was like, how might we use that tool and compare it to something else, like unschooled, untrained thinkers, trained thinkers without, um, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, just let me know. Like, I've got this first group, I think it's in April, but then, I teach another couple of classes in the fall. Um,
I
I
love that
could
idea, Mark.
do something different with them. So I want to play around. As long as we don't
Really
publish
neat.
anything,
Yeah.
don't have to do ethics. It's my classroom. I could do whatever I want.
We're going to just erase that part of this tape.
Oh, yeah, sorry, it's being recorded. Well, I
Or
did
we'll
say I
edit
won't
that part
publish,
out.
so okay.
You will not publish it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Other
Elaine.
part, the other piece I'm thinking is how we use the assessment, how we can use the what he knows about you profile and maybe even more detail like you have in the slideshow, so you get a lot of nuances, and then either helps dealing with team dynamics or give you some I'm talking to this person, help me out, this is what the problem I have with Joe, and no, by the way, this is Joe profile, how can I actually talk to them, like there
So it's
is
like
this
an
app.
AI coach kind of thing.
Yeah, so I have this app called Pebble. I know one of the co-founder, and he's trying to. It's kind of a coach for relationships, like human relationship, human challenges and stuff. It's called Pebble. But it's kind of cool because it's what it does. So I have to have this different difficult conversation with my aunt or my coworker or something. This is what I'm thinking. Give me some suggestion on how to do it. So you can do the same thing around how do I communicate with somebody based on their foresight profile. That could be
Super
really amazing.
interesting. We should talk to the Pebble guys.
Yeah, I can put you in touch.
That'd be neat.
I've used it in that way, not so much with foresight, but like what you're saying, where I have this excruciatingly difficult family member, and my brother and I got on ChatGPT together and started like describing what was happening and asking for advice, like how do we best communicate with them? And the advice was really good. It was super helpful. Yeah. So I think it's a really cool tool for that.
Super interesting. Um, all right, let's just see what we have. Okay, we just did that. Um, just in the interest of making sure we can close this when we need to close it, we'll stay on later. I would love to continue this conversation for a long time, actually, but um, I wanted to swing the conversation back to Gerard because it really strikes me that this is an opportunity right now, before most organizations have come up with an official, this is how we do it, this is always how we use AI. Things are still in flux. Most organizations are still in the pilot stage, according to a McKinsey study that came out in November. Like most people are still experimenting with what they're going to do here. And I think there's a real opportunity for people who have training in creative problem solving and creative thinking and creative process and collaboration to influence how people use AI as a thinking tool. And I love what Gerard said. He said, our work is so much more important now. If AI is based on human thinking, we have to up our game. We need to help people use Foresight to invite AI to challenge our thinking and to direct AI's thinking. So I would love to, yeah, oh, I love the virtual applause. But yeah, I think we are all on the Foresight team really actively in pursuit of how to bring this how to bring foresight to the table in a way that's useful to people and useful to teams. It reminds me, this period of time reminds me a lot of 2020 in March when we realized we are up against something we've never really seen before. And this community of foresight certified facilitators came together every week to figure out like how do we transition to move our work virtually, like how can we have impact, and we taught each other and shared a great deal of successes and also failures. But I think it's that time again, and that this challenge is AI. And Helene, you flagged it 2 years ago that this was coming, but I think everybody else is kind of caught up, catching up to you on the recognition. At least you're well beyond most of us in terms of execution and what is going on. But I think we're here in recognizing, wow, AI is right here, and it is really influencing what our clients are needing to do and how they're needing to interact. And what we do now is really important. So if any of you guys are interested in having a one-on-one interview or conversation, I would love to take everybody's best thinking to ATD in May and share what we're coming up with. But thank you for joining the session today, and we'll stay on. But thank you for this.
And I